Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into Everyday Eternal. For today's episode, we invited a very special guest, Cyrus Corman-Gill, to continue a discussion we started in social media earlier that day. Because Cyrus was traveling, he had to put up with some difficulties to be able to join us. At one point in the cast, his audio quality drops a bit. We let him finish his point and then fix the issue. I'm just mentioning this because we are aware of the audio issues we had on the previous cast, and we are making sure that those won't be repeated. Content-wise, a large part of this cast is actually about the GoFundMe and organized play discussion that blew up on community Twitter this week. We specifically invited Cyrus because he has a different point of view from Bob and me, and I think we made great progress in understanding the different points of view and explaining the different issues that people had with that. If you would like to skip that part, I recommend going to around the 49-minute mark, where we start discussing legacy, vintage, and also some old school, as Cyrus and Bob are playing those at SCGCON this weekend. I hope you will enjoy today's episode. As always, we would be happy to hear your feedback on social media, in person, or with a postcard to, well, it says Julian here, but that would be awkward, so let's say to me. Thanks again, and now here comes the cast. Hello everyone to the 58th episode of Everyday Eternal. Tonight we spent like over an hour almost trying to fix our audio levels because we have a very special guest who actually put in a lot of effort to be with us tonight. He flew way far across the country and he's staying at, Bob, help me out, Roanoke.
Virginia. I don't know how you find it so difficult. Roanoke,
that sounds
you got it.
Tonight, we welcome Cyrus on the podcast. If you've been following Legacy, you probably know who Cyrus is. He's also known as Cyrus CG Online, and he pretty much made a very well-known name for himself over the course of the last 12 months. Hey Cyrus, how's it going?
Good, thanks for having me on. I would say I'm best known for not being invited onto the Legacy Premier League, but then being invited onto the much more prestigious Vintage Super League and making the quarterfinals of that, so... There's no hard feelings there, though.
It's a dig because Julian sort of ran LPL last season, so
sort of.
And he did not know who I was.
No, I knew you were because you were like in the Legacy chat or something, and you were always the guy who brought up, hey, I'm like 2-0 against Julian with Belcher, and I'm like, who's this guy?
You would always talk about how Elves beats Belcher.
Yeah, right, 80% win rate for Elves, easy game.
I'd be like, I don't really think that's true.
Grudge match.
That would be the most exhilarating television that could exist. Elves versus Belcher.
Game 1, best of 50. Oh my god, somebody's gonna
play.
Somebody's gonna put up money for that.
Yeah.
No, Cyrus, seriously, tell us about yourself. Quick introduction, because you've been super successful as of late, but you've probably been in the game for quite a while. I listened to your interview on Humans of Magic, which was like super impressive, but your results recently really speak for themselves.
Yeah, so, I started playing Magic around 8th edition, I think, when I was a kid. I was 8 years old at that time. And then I took a break and then came back in college about, I think, 3 years ago. It was kind of right after Eldrazi Winter, that spring I started playing again. And I played lots of Fair Blue decks on Moto. Actually, my first Moto, ever time playing Moto, we got paired Julian, and I was a big fan of yours. I was playing Blue-Red Delver. And you talked to me about the matchup, and it really helped me a lot figure out, he's like, you were like, oh, I think you should try to kill these elves rather than these ones. And I remember that being pretty cool. I was like logged on to Magic Online, and here's like this legacy celebrity I got to play against. So, so I played a lot of Delver, and then everyone at my local game store kind of just played all these decks that were really good against Delver that had like a lot of basic forests and stuff like that. And I thought that was really stupid. And so I built Storm, and then kind of just stopped losing and have had some decent success. I was a runner-up at Eternal Weekend. I won an SCG Team Open, Moto Legacy Challenge, I guess, if you count those. And I just play a lot of Magic. And I stream, stuff like that. So
you've achieved a decent level of success when you're like, well, and I guess I won a legacy challenge if you want to count that.
Well, it's kind of funny because I have like a 20% win rate in the legacy challenge. I feel like they start at 8 in the morning for me, and I always go like 0-2 drop. But one time I just kind of randomly made the finals and then ended up getting pretty lucky. I won on turn 1 in the final. So, and when my opponent also had a turn 1 kill, so it was pretty smart of me to win on turn 1 on the play.
Was that the one you played against Caleb in the finals?
It was, yeah. That was exciting with his Grixis Phoenix deck. That was a cool deck.
Oh, awesome.
Keyword was. I think Phoenix was a cool deck. Then they printed War of the Spark, and everything went haywire.
Yeah, I guess we're probably going to get into that a little bit today, too.
Yeah, that's going to be the second part of the cast. For the first part of the cast, we are going to touch on a somewhat hot topic, and well, not only Legacy, but Magic in general tonight, which is the GoFundMe campaigns and all the... Well, I don't really want to call it drama around that because it wasn't too much drama, but for the sake of marketing and advertising this podcast, I'm gonna call it drama.
Wow, Julian, you really don't know anything about marketing. You never want to say that you're like creating drama. You just want to do it and then just see all the reactions that follow.
Yeah, the thing is, I try to market like safaris, and you don't really want drama in safaris. You want like fake drama. Like people want to see lions chasing like rhinos. Actually, that doesn't happen.
just not lions chasing people.
Well, it happens, but I'm sorry to say, but only to Chinese. Like in the 6 years I've been there, the only people who have been eaten by lions were Chinese.
Wow, and you're trying to get me to come on one of your safaris.
That's why.
Yeah, you'd be surrounded by a lot of like Europeans and like, well, I guess you're American.
So if I'm next to the Europeans, they won't eat me. Got it.
Usually they won't, yeah. So before we get into this, thanks a lot once again, Cyrus, for coming on. You really like put in a lot of work to make this work for us because it's so hard to schedule between Europe and the US, and both you and Bob have a big tournament coming up on the weekend. And I think you're sitting in a hotel lobby right now. Is that correct? In your hotel room?
Yeah, I left California. I got on my plane at midnight last night, and then I had 4 separate delays. So I flew from California to Chicago, and I almost missed my flight there, and it got delayed. And my flight in San Francisco got delayed.
Wait, hold on. What? How many times were you delayed, and how many legs are there?
So I flew from San Francisco to Chicago, and before leaving San Francisco, my flight was delayed. And then when I got to Chicago, my flight was delayed 3 times. And then I flew from Chicago to Roanoke. But when we flew to Roanoke, the Roanoke airport was closed down. And so we had to fly from Roanoke to Richmond, and then we had a delay in Richmond. And then they waited until the Roanoke airport opened back up. And then we flew from Richmond, Virginia to Roanoke, Virginia. And now I'm here. So got here a little later than I expected, but it was kind of,
You don't sound like one of those people who gets a lot of rest on planes.
No, I don't know. I slept a lot, but
just bad sleep.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired, but I'll fly pretty far to play the older formats, and I really like playing Vintage, and that's kind of the main reason I'm here is I'm playing Vintage twice this weekend. I guess Bob and I are going to be at a SCGCON this weekend. I think you're playing in the Invitational, Bob, and I'm not, but there's a one-day Legacy Open, one-day Vintage Open, and a one-day Team Trios Legacy Old School Vintage Open, as well as the Invitational, which is a 2-day Modern/Standard format. I'm not exactly sure the format of that.
Potentially 3 days, but yeah, it's a Standard Modern Envy.
Okay.
Whoa.
Because I was invited to the last one, but...
Yeah, I know. Let's definitely touch on that. I want to touch on that when we talk about Wizards and maybe Star City and organized play in general, what things they can change. But like Julian said, we kind of wanted to talk about GoFundMes, just maybe even more generally the idea of Magic the Gathering and money, and how the two are obviously very interweaved. So let's just go ahead and get started. So Magic is an incredibly expensive hobby. Literally, legacy decks are they range from the cheapest good deck is probably Death and Taxes, and it's well over $1,000, and the other blue decks can be $4,000. That is just a regular person does not necessarily have that much money to spend on their hobbies. Now, I know obviously a lot of people can get by borrowing cards. I think the Legacy community is really welcoming, and I'm always happy to lend out a deck if I go to an LGS, for example. or even for like an open. And like so people can often get by borrowing decks, and like if you become good at Magic, it can be a plus EV hobby. Like you can definitely make some money playing Magic. That being said, I for better or for worse, I do kind of see it as a very like luxury hobby, just because of how the economics play out. Like even if you just play limited, like that's probably spending like I don't know $15 a week to play that, and that's like the cheapest format. So that's kind of just like at its core what Magic is. So the other thing I did want to talk about before we delved into this is kind of just like each of our individual backgrounds, I guess, when it comes to like money and Magic and like how we got to where we got here. So I'll start with myself. I will say I'm definitely like very privileged. I didn't grow up like by any means wealthy, but definitely solidly middle class. We were poor when I was little, but I was mostly little at the time. So like as soon as I grew up, I went to like a good public school, good college, ended up getting a good job. So I definitely come from a position of privilege when it comes to that. So I definitely like keep that in mind as I'm like saying some of these things that I do feel strongly about, but I do want to make that part clear. So why don't you guys go now?
Yeah, for me, I kind of did like a reverse Bob. My initial upbringing was like, it's hard to judge, but I think it was very, very privileged. Like when I went to primary school, my friends would sometimes ask whether my parents are rich, and I had no concept of what that means. And like I actually only got to know what that means once we weren't rich anymore. Like they're not going too deep, but I've been. I don't want to talk about that too much, not because it's embarrassing, but because it feels weird to like wear that as a thing. But I've had some periods in my life where I was like sleeping at work and also had some other.
You did an AMA about that.
I actually did that on Reddit, yeah, so if you want to find that out, you can find that on Reddit. I actually did an AMA on Reddit.
Link it on your show notes. I find it really entertaining and like interesting.
Yeah, it's entertaining. So basically the idea is while I went to university like for almost 6 years, half the year pretty much I was sleeping at work because my parents had no place for me to stay, and like you still want to like come home and work and stuff. And I did an AMA. I'm not super proud of it because that was, I think, 7 or 8 years ago, and I didn't know, but I noticed that I was a little bit more of a different person. But also part of that was things were a little bit harsher, and I'm slowly coming back up again, and I feel like I'm really getting somewhere in life now, but that hasn't always been the case, and that's. I mean, if I had gotten into Legacy with the prices the way they are right now, I would have never gotten into Legacy. Like I remember buying my first deck where duels were like €15.
Yeah.
And so basically, that's my kind of background. It's still quite tight, but I'm going somewhere. I actually don't own a Legacy deck right now. I sold Elves last year. Part of the decision was that I wanted to play less paper and focus more on what I mentioned, like getting somewhere in life, because I felt like I was super successful in like eternal terms, but not really in the bigger scale of things in life terms. And also, like, not gonna lie, like money was an issue. Like played not the primary, but a very close secondary factor in that decision. So, like you mentioned, I borrow decks right now, and that's been going pretty well. And I love streaming, and you don't really need decks for that. But that's where I am.
Sponsorships are like helping too. Like I know Card Hoarder definitely.
Shout outs to Card Hoarders. Yeah. They are so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of have an interesting financial background. So neither of my parents graduated college or anything. They both kind of dropped out of high school. And so, and they also were not together when I was born. So in my early years, we definitely struggled for money. Both my parents were addicts. So, like we didn't really often have groceries, would sometimes be kind of worrying about places to sleep or what I was going to eat. But when you're a kid, that's just kind of your reality. My mom ended up losing custody of me when I was a pretty young kid, about 7 years old, I think, maybe 8 years old. And then I'm pretty lucky to have a pretty well-off extended family. So after that, I was raised by my grandparents, who were solidly middle class. We weren't like rich, but I never had to really worry about anything. And then when I was a kid, I had hot lunch and I was on welfare. And when I was in college, I went to junior college and then paid my way through that. And then I had an athletic scholarship, some portions of that. And I also got kind of my school paid for by financial aid, because the U.S. government, if your family's combined income is less than $10,000, they basically just pay for your entire education, which at least in California, a special program I did. So I ended up graduating college, and then I now work a job that I'm making like kind of below minimum wage, and I have a long commute, and my rent's kind of high, and so I just haven't had over $100 in my bank account ever in my entire life. So that's kind of where I'm at, and this is kind of a little embarrassing to admit, but part of college is, this is when I was maybe a little bit irresponsible, is they sometimes give you financial aid checks to buy books and stuff, but I was like, hey, I can buy these books for cheaper than the money they're giving me, and I suddenly have an extra $1,000 left over. And I did that 3 times, and then I saved up enough money to buy a legacy deck, which was not what I should have done with that money. And I was kind of just a dumb.
No, that sounds awesome. Actually, that's like
I don't think that's embarrassing at all.
Yeah, I don't think that's
it's just not how you're supposed to use the money. Like, they're supposed to give you that money because you're poor and you need to go to school. But I just was like, well, I want to own legacy cards, and so I had been using proxies and playing on Moto, and I saved up all of my financial aid that I didn't need. Like, I would just
Yeah, but like you were still going to school. It's not like you like dropped out of school to play Magic. Like that would be more of an issue to me. But yeah.
Yeah, my family was poor. I mean, yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so that's how I ended up getting my legacy deck. And then for those that have seen me play on camera, I do happen to have basically a fully foiled, black bordered, signed legacy deck, which I put a lot of time into. But to be clear about that, the reason I have those cards is that I've done pretty well at Card Titan and Channel Fireball tournaments, which end up paying you out in store credit. And rather than just convert that store credit to duels or whatever and then sell them, I just said, okay, well, I'm just going to get the foils for my deck that I want, and if I ever need money, I'll sell them. And so far, I haven't really needed money, and I'm lucky enough to kind of through Moto and then doing moderately successful and paper tournaments, I've been able to have Magic be a pretty net positive for me every year that I've played the last few years. So, but yeah, I mean, I like when I won the Star City Games Vegas, I needed that money to pay my rent that month, and I would not have been able to pay my rent if I didn't win that tournament. So it's not my favorite lifestyle I've ever lived. Sometimes when I'm doing bad in leagues or something and it's not the best, or like when chess values drop like they did recently, or when Card Hoarder or anyone, the Moto is just kind of less popular because Arena, so they start buying tickets for less. It gets a little stressful for me just because I kind of need that money to sometimes to pay rent or buy groceries. But again, I am lucky and privileged in some ways that I'm, a white male and I went to college and I have a very nice family that will support me. Like if I ever really needed money, my grandparents would be able to help me out or whatever. So that's kind of where my financial situation, I guess.
I think the most important thing, without getting too deep into that aspect, is that you've got a feeling, like I mentioned for me, that you're actually going somewhere with what you're doing in life. Like even if you're don't have more than $100 in your bank account right now, if you're feeling that what you're doing somewhat gets you on a track to get somewhere, then I think it's all about the trend, right? It's not where you are or where you've been. It's like, are you trending upwards or at least towards where you want to be? And then it doesn't really matter all that much whether you have like $10,000 or $100,000 in your bank, as long as you can pay.
Well, I just graduated college, so I'm like a full-time volunteer, basically a paid volunteer currently. So, but I went to a good school. I went to UC Berkeley, which is a fine school. Not as good as Dartmouth, like Mr. Bob over here, but but it's still.
I remember my professor went to Berkeley, and he told me he used to like get hammered and get high and stuff. Yeah, it's like I guess I didn't mention his name, so I can talk about that. But he told me like he had his lungs collapsed twice from like smoking so much weed in the U.S. when he was there at Berkeley.
Wow. Yeah,
anyway,
I did not have that issue. I was basically just only focusing on school. But when I graduated,
maybe that's why you're not a professor.
Changes, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I go back. But I'm planning on eventually going back to school or whatever. But we'll see. So yeah, that's kind of my financial situation. So I'm kind of like on the side of, if I had qualified for a tournament, I would not been able to afford it. But I have sold my cards before to pay rent and buy groceries, which is something I'm comfortable with because I know I don't need to own however many dollars worth of Magic cards I own, But I just like them because I'm also not the most financially responsible person. So
yeah, and I think that's totally fair. And just to kind of set the stage for our listeners who might not be following the drama as closely as we've been. So basically, with the new changes in the Pro Magic system, Mythic Championship qualifiers now no longer award a travel award. So previously, Wizards, basically, if you qualified for the Pro Tour, they would just pay for your flight, and then they would just add it to your prize pool at the end of the year in terms of taxes. So you would be taxed on those as though you were given that as a prize, but that's still like way less money than a $1,500 flight would be. So they got rid of that, American. And a lot of people have been winning MCQs, and they haven't been able to afford a way to go. And so what they did initially was they started a GoFundMe and tried to raise money from the public, which I think I have no problems with that. Like, if you are poor, you're chasing a dream, like, I think it's totally fair to, ask for help. You're not doing, like, harm to anybody necessarily. So, like, I have no problem with that at all. But then you kind of saw a little bit more GoFundMes as, like, these became more popular, and then there became, like, several more questionable ones where it would be like, in the GoFundMe, I think there was a GoFundMe where, like, someone talked about how they just foiled out their Tron deck and they really want to go, and another one was like, people knew this person had money, but they just asked for it anyways, and so there it became a little bit more like hazier, like, and also maybe I'm making some assumptions here. About, like, how much money they have, and, like, I probably shouldn't do something like that, because, like, for me, like, again, as long as nobody's, like, lying in these GoFundMes, like, I don't necessarily, like, have a problem with them existing. I do personally feel that maybe people should be more financially responsible. Like, me, I just grew up, with standard Asian parents. They're like, oh yeah, a penny saved is a penny earned. So I definitely just, like, grew up with, like, a very strong feeling of, like, it's important to be responsible and save your money and, like, do things like, study first and, like, put your career first, stuff like that. And, like, maybe I'm, like, kind of privileged to, like, have that ingrained in me, but I also just feel like in general, a lot of people are very irresponsible with their money. So I don't know, kind of just, like, setting the scene and kind of table for what's happened. And, like, so I know, Julian, you were telling me that, for example, like, you were really upset by this because you have personally had to sell your Magic collection in the past to, like, pay your bills and do things like that. Whereas you're like, well, if I knew this was an option, I would have just, like, been like, hey, why don't you guys, like, help pay my bills and I'll keep my Magic cards.
Yeah, it's that was my pretty much initial feeling, but that's not. I mean, the thing that annoyed me about, like, I don't want to, like, it's not about the person, but there were, like, one or two GoFundMes where I felt like they're not being honest with people. Like, that's the thing that like, anyone, like, even if you're a millionaire, if you want to put out a GoFundMe and be like, hey, I want to go to this and this, and if you guys want to help me, that would be great. That's perfectly fine for me. I don't see that, like, getting a lot of, like, backers, but some people might still do it. Who knows? I don't care about that. I find it disingenuous when people go out there and they sell it as, like, this is my big dream. This is the big thing I want to do in Magic, because when I feel that's not true, I feel like people are being lied to. And when people, it's not so much about, like, me being bitter about me having sold my deck and not gone down that road, even though, like, initially I felt a little bit dumb for that, but maybe that's not maybe, that's actually, like, my problem. Like, I could have gone out there and be like, hey guys, I moved to this new place and I have, like, student loans kicking in now and I actually can't afford rent, so what should I do? So can you help me? But that's something each individual should decide for themselves. I don't want to judge that. It's just, like, to me, it's when people sell it as their big dream, yet they are not willing to, for example, like, okay, I'm getting a little bit lost in this. But basically, it comes down to, when you tell me it's your big dream, is it really your big dream if you're not willing to put, like, all the surplus resources you have inside that dream, like foil decks and stuff, and, like,
yeah, I mean, that's really
the
problem, which is, like, it's really hard to get at. It's like, how do you know if someone has resources versus not having resources? And, like, I don't want to be one to be like, oh, if you make X amount of money, that means you're poor, and therefore you should not have foil decks. You should play with regular decks, like. But at the same time, I just don't think that's a very common occurrence, and maybe I'm just wrong about that. Like, I feel like most people say they have a foil, like, $4,000, like, Legacy or $2,000 Modern deck. Like, come on, you can just play with regular cards. Like, that's just my general feeling, and that's why I had, like, sort of a strong reaction. And so I made a Twitter poll. It was like, should you be expected to defoil your deck and just play with regular cards? I'm not saying you should, like, sell your collection. I'm saying, like, hey, just play with regular cards, and then that'll raise some money to the trip. That Twitter poll generated a pretty strong reaction. I think it was pretty split 50-50. A lot of people felt the way I did, which was like, hey man, you can like help yourself before you ask others to help you. But then other people are like, hey, you shouldn't judge anybody's like financial situation. They're not hurting anybody, so like why do you care? And I definitely see that point of view too. So like I'm not really necessarily against it. Like personally, I feel like people should do a better job of being more responsible. But I'm also not going to be like, I'm going to set a hard line on anything. So yeah, Cyrus, what are your thoughts?
Before we get Cyrus' take on that, I want to say to me it's not exactly like about telling people to be financially responsible. I think they should be as irresponsible pretty much as they want to be. That's kind of like a learning thing for everyone. To me, it's really just about when I feel it's disingenuous, and also, and like you mentioned, it's a very, very hard thing to talk about, because like if I feel like this person isn't being honest with the community, and at the same time, I can't really know, because maybe they're keeping like this stash of $10,000 in cards or something for, I don't know, maybe they have a sickness and they have bills coming up and they don't want to talk about that, so they actually need the money. So it's actually kind of weird to talk about that, but it's still something that like generated a lot of buzz in the community, and that's why we're here to talk about that tonight. But Cyrus, go ahead. Like we talked about that in a couple of chats, so that's also why we invited you. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, so to be clear, Wizards of the Coast didn't just do away with the travel voucher and not replace it with anything. So what it is now is that there's a minimum prize at the Mythic Championship. So even the last place finisher at the Mythic Championship, Barcelona is going to receive $500. So that's similar to the travel voucher they previously gave out. Where this issue arises is that, a flight to Barcelona from the United States is probably going to cost you around $1,000, especially since that tournament is July 27th, I believe. So it's only a month and a half away, where it could be kind of hard to, get the plane ticket, get the hotel, everything, compared to if you're trying to book a trip, several months in advance. They still get the money at the end, but the upfront cost can be difficult, even though, like, for me, how I usually pay for my Magic trips is with the credit card. Since I don't have a lot on my bank account, and then I use the winnings from the Magic tournament to pay it off, and then if I don't do well at the Magic tournament, I'll just sell cards while I'm at the venue. But yeah, so kind of the issue I have, and I think that all three of us are on the same page here, and that was what was a bit confusing, because when you're communicating over the internet and we're all in different time zones, maybe some person's at work communicating, so they can't really talk, maybe someone's at home and had a few beers, maybe someone's just waking up or going to bed, and everyone's kind of just on a different page of the level of seriousness they're willing to discuss all the time, and combining that with the 200 character limit on tweets, it can be hard to really facilitate a productive discussion, which is what's nice about a podcast forum, is it's more easy to do that. So the rhetoric that I find problematic is, like Bob said, telling people, how to spend their money, because you oftentimes just don't really know someone's situation. And obviously, I mean, my personal feeling is, I do think that if you do have the means to support yourself, it's good. You don't necessarily need to ask someone for help. But also, you don't always know someone's exact means. Like me, for example, like I fly to Magic tournaments and I have a nice Magic deck. And one reason I do those things is I feel like it's overall net positive for my income on average. But I'm going to be honest, like my grandma sometimes almost always gives me a check for groceries and gas so that I can drive to work and buy groceries and eat food. So it's like, I could just argue, be like, well, your grandma's just, you're just taking money from your grandma. What you could do is just sell your whole Magic collection, and then your grandma wouldn't need to give you money. And then I don't know. This kind of hits home for me, because I remember, like, I would always see people like, oh, well, I'm not going to give a poor person money because they have a cell phone, or I'm not going to give a poor person money because they're just going to spend it on X, Y, or Z. And the thing is being able to like consistently pay your bills, and have like a cell phone is a lot cheaper than an apartment. I'll just, and also I just never really feel like it's anyone's place to judge someone on how they give their finances. But I think when you look at outliers, like people who do really have enough money and they're just trying to scam the system, I really do think that's an outlier. And the problem with getting upset publicly about that sort of situation is I think that it can make it harder for people who really do need help to ask for the help. And people can argue, well, Magic's a luxury hobby. You don't really need to go to the Pro Tour. But the thing is I'm just going to say being poor really sucks. Like, it's just nice sometimes to feel like, oh, well, like, maybe you get one chance in your entire life. Like, I've seen people say, well, if they can't afford to go to the Pro Tour, they just shouldn't play in a PTQ. But maybe you just like playing Magic because you're poor and you're stressed out, and maybe, one weekend a month you get a chance to go play in a Magic tournament, and you save up your $40 or whatever to enter the PTQ, and you play it, are you really going to tell that person, oh, well, you should just not play in the PTQ? You know, like, most people are not going to win the tournament they enter in. And then it's like, maybe you've loved Magic your whole life. Like, I've wanted to play on the Pro Tour since I was 8 years old, and I never have, and who knows if I ever will. But it's like, if I had the opportunity to go play, you can sure bet I would try to find any way that I could. And for me, it would start with selling probably some of my massive Magic collection, or not massive, but nice Magic collection. But not everyone has that Magic collection. Maybe you borrowed a deck for the PTQ. And I just think that's, again, so I'm kind of, running on here, but my problem is that when you criticize people who you feel are being disingenuous, yeah, obviously it sucks if people are doing that because they could be taking money away. But then maybe there's someone like me who has a job, has some cards, and it would really make it very difficult for them to go to Barcelona. Like, I would have to just go into debt, and that's fine, and I would do that. But not everyone's in that situation. Maybe they don't have good credit. Maybe they don't have a credit card, and maybe they just didn't plan to have a trip to Europe a month in advance that Wizards isn't letting them defer for financial reasons, which is its whole separate issue. So I just always am kind of like, if people want to ask for money, that's fine. If you know this person, if you know their situation, you could donate the money. But I just don't like publicly calling people out, which I know neither of you have really done. But some people have publicly made some pretty aggressive tweets against people asking for help. And then again, so my problem with that is I feel like there's going to be people out there who really do need help who are afraid to ask because they don't want Matt Sperling to mock them on Twitter. And Matt is a good friend of mine, and that's why I'm saying his name. And I talked to him about that, and we disagree on this situation. But I just felt, maybe a rich white male corporate lawyer shouldn't really necessarily be telling people how to spend their money who just got second at a Pro Tour.
To sum up what you're saying is basically, even if those outlier corner cases do happen and it's bad, it's probably overall a net positive to not actually call them out unless you actually have some proper proof or whatever, because it will create a community that basically the overall community will be worse, or people will be worse off, because it will also inevitably hurt people who really do need that money. So we probably should just accept things the way they are with regards to that. Is that how I'm getting it?
Yeah, I mean, you see history, if you study economics or something, and there's one of the criticisms from the Conservative Party of the United States, we don't need to get into politics, was there's gonna be welfare queens.
Oh, we should.
There's that's what I studied at school, that's what I do for work, is politics. So people are like, oh, well, there's welfare queens, and these people, they're just gonna take their welfare check and they're gonna go buy a Cadillac because maybe somehow one person ever went and leased a Cadillac with their welfare check. And now it's suddenly people are like, well, I'm not going to apply for welfare because I don't want people to think less of me, and they're embarrassed. And again, and the main argument I think it comes down to is, do you need to go to the Pro Tour? And I would argue, no, you don't need to. But guess what? Like I said, being poor sucks. And if you have one chance to go do something that you've wanted to do your entire life, and people are like, oh, well, I have a friend, a Pro Tour champion, that was like, well, I don't really get it. I would just go play in a different one. I'm like, yeah, that's the thing, dude. Not everyone gets to go play in every Pro Tour because they're not good enough to qualify. Maybe they got really lucky one time and they feel like this is their only shot, which is, for the vast majority of the people that play on the Pro Tour, that is the case, I imagine. So I think that the argument can be made, well, you don't need to play with foils. I agree with that. You don't need to play Magic at all. You don't need to own cards. It's all subjective, and that's the issue. And I just feel like if someone needs help, it's fine for them to ask for help. You don't need to go to college, so should you ask for money for college? Should you take out loans? I don't know. It's just to me, it feels almost like a slippery slope type of thing where do you draw the line? And everyone can have their own personal opinions on that. I just find that the rhetoric can be harmful to people who are actually in need, not just in Magic, but people who, maybe are not as financially well off in general. And the thing is that, yeah, Magic's expensive, but some people like Goldacott, Daniel Gauchol, who won GP Niagara Falls, and we need Magic the Gathering Online to have enough money to get by. I know he's a moto grinder, and his logic is, well, that's my part-time job. And, you could argue, well, we can just go work at another part-time job, but I'm already working 50 hours a week. When I get home, I don't want to go make hamburgers anymore. I want to go play Magic cards. And so, I don't know. It's not always a luxury hobby for everyone. For me, it's a source of income, so...
Yeah, that's totally fair, and I'm really glad that you're here to kind of share that perspective. And I would say you've definitely changed kind of my point of view on the matter. In general, in life, I really think that you can take many paths towards having a happy and successful life. You don't necessarily need to do one thing to do that. So like I generally try not to judge people for like the paths they take in life, because I think there's just so many different things you can do, and I don't think there's one path. So I'm definitely like, you've basically kind of convinced me to change my stance on this, which is like, yeah, like you said, it's overall like probably a net benefit for the community if we're supportive of people. And then if, for example, let's say I personally am against like someone not defoiling their deck before they ask for help, then I can make that decision for myself and choose not to fund that. It doesn't really hurt me at all just to like not fund that one GoFundMe. So I think you've basically kind of changed my point of view. I do want to add a little bit, like, so I think what kind of a lot of people's perspective they are coming from, and I've talked to some of my friends, like what they were saying kind of was like basically, so I have this one friend who chose not to play in MCQs because he has a job. He recently got married, and like he's probably not in debt anymore. Like, but he's like trying to buy a house and stuff. So he's like definitely doing fine, but not like super wealthy or anything. He's like, yeah, I probably just couldn't justify the trip, so that's why I decided not to attend. Whereas like everybody else just seems to be like, oh, I didn't plan for this, and now I'm gonna ask people for money. Like that's kind of where they are coming from, and they don't see like other sides. So like on one hand, I do feel kind of bad that like quote unquote they're doing the responsible thing by like not doing this, and then they're like kind of quote unquote like missed out by not winning the MCQ and doing a GoFundMe. So that's kind of like, I don't think necessarily these people are coming from a bad perspective either. I just think like they, like me, maybe didn't have like the full kind of view of everything before like jumping on Twitter and typing like a tweet.
Yeah, something that's super interesting about what Cyrus mentioned to me is that actually I didn't think about the part where you're basically arguing that even though those outliers do happen, they're a net positive. They're not like calling them out constantly and making a big fuss about it is a net positive, because that's exactly how I've experienced like the whole debate about welfare in Germany, but it seems to be very similar in the US, where people are like, yeah, there's these like 0.01% of people who really game and abuse the system, but the bad rhetoric you bring forward makes life for the 99.99% so much worse that overall, yes, do try to fix those issues, but generally, like, don't make it too big, because it really has immense impact on the lives of people who really do need that money and who are in situations like, so I don't know, I actually didn't come into this thinking that I could actually have like a strong change of mind. It wasn't like super strongly tending towards the things that we mentioned early on, where people are like trying to maybe game the system in a way, but now I think I can very well see what Cyrus is arguing. Dude, you...
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't expect this to happen.
I think we're all on the same page. I mean, I get it. Like, I've sold my entire Magic collection multiple times, Like, when I was 16, I got a speeding ticket going to see my girlfriend the first day of summer, and I got like an $800 speeding ticket. It was insane. And I had to sell my entire Magic collection. I sold all my dual lands, which are worth much more now, and things like that. And it's just like, I don't know. Like, I've had to sell my cards to pay rent. And then I'm like, but the thing is we don't even know if people own cards. Like Bob gave the example of people borrowing decks. And yeah, and I don't know. It just, I think I made how I feel fairly clear. So I'm glad that, I think that we all shared a similar opinion. It's just more of a perspective. And I definitely used to feel the same way. It's like, you feel like, well, I earned this, or I did it this way. Why shouldn't everyone? And you just never know someone's exact situation. Like with mental health, with, maybe they never had anyone teach them how to manage their finances, things like that. And again, like I said, Magic is just a game. It's just for fun. But for some people, like, maybe going to the Pro Tour builds your brand, like, maybe you feel like this is your chance. You could top 8, you could be a pro or something. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's like, I don't like the rhetoric of telling people how to handle their finances in general, just because you don't know someone's exact situation. Because like, you could look at me and I have a nice middle-class white family, and I have a nice Magic deck, and you'd think, oh, this guy isn't over $1,000 in credit card debt literally every day, but I am, and I'm making decisions to fly out to Roanoke, Virginia and play Magic tournaments anyways, because that's what makes me happy. And I'm not personally asking people for money on the internet, but I could understand someone in my situation wanting to do that, and I wouldn't think it's so bad, because Magic makes me happy, and I like it, and I make some money from it,
So I think the next big thing that's actually going to be interesting is this going to be the standard for all the Mythic Championships in years to come. Is because right now there's a huge boom with GoFundMes, and I think I've seen a lot of them who actually got overfunded, and people are actually being sent there by their fans or their friends or even strangers. But is this gonna remain like that? It's gonna stay in place for like the next. I think the one after that is somewhere in the US, so people probably won't need as much help anymore. Maybe it's going to be Europeans then.
Yeah, it's actually in Virginia. It's in Richmond, Virginia, where Bob and I basically are right now. So I was there today.
So, Bob, are you going to set up a GoFundMe for like $50 for the cap ride?
No, it's funny. Actually, last time I qualified for the Pro Tour, the only Pro Tour I went to, it was in Virginia, and they like offered to pay for my travel. I'm like, yeah, I got it. But yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about organized play and Wizards of the Coast. So like it was basically, honestly, I'm just like very angry and upset at Wizards of the Coast. And I was talking to Anurag about this, and he's like, yeah, why are you like criticizing these GoFundMes? Like the root of the problem is Wizards. And while I do sympathize with Wizards somewhat, I think they were very generous before by offering full travel. I don't think too many like games necessarily did that. Their abrupt change was definitely for the worse. I have a lot of problems with how they've communicated. They've basically eliminated gold. They've basically eliminated all pro scenes other than, who they like as streamers plus the MPL.
Which consists of people
really
they like
tough.
as streamers.
Yeah, I mean, that's really tough on like, the grinders out there, and like the grinders are definitely hurting, and like this MCQ change doesn't help them at all. There are definitely some like mitigating factors of like what MCQs could do. Like maybe MCQs could like change the prize structure or increase entry fees to fund the flight for first place. I've seen that as a suggestion. I think personally it would be good if Wizards allowed anybody to defer an invite for any reason, because right now you can't really do it unless you have like a child who's being born or like some life event, typically is what you need to defer. So I think they should just let everybody defer, because originally how they were gonna, this is what they did. Like this is my whole problem with Wizards of the Coast, is they keep like haphazardly, like they make a plan, they don't stick to it, and then they just like slap on a haphazard change. They actually had a reasonable plan where you would qualify for the Mythic Championship that your GP was local to. So the vast majority of people play local GPs, and then if you're traveling far for a GP, presumably you can travel far for a Pro Tour. But instead they got rid of that system and then went back to the old system without like adding the MCQ prizes. So like I just think like they're just doing everything haphazard because MTG Arena blew up and was making them, and they saw like a big money opportunity, and now that's why they're encouraging all these popular streamers too, is because they think of that as a bigger money opportunity for them. So like I get it, they're a business, they're trying to make money, but like they just need to be more transparent and kind of like think things through just a little bit more. I've seen people suggest like player consultants to come back. I like that idea a lot. But I do think Wizards needs to do a much better job, and I think like at least one of the side benefits of this Twitter outrage is like hopefully like Wizards will take another hard look at how they've changed organized play and fix some things they've done wrong in the past year.
One of the changes that they have proposed for the future that was also kind of mocked, where people say like play the game, see your immediate geographic region or something, that when you could qualify for a Mythic Championship now, it's gonna be the one on your continent. Hey guys, sorry we had a short break, some audio broke up, but we are back to this now. So I think we just talked about how they proposed a change that if you qualify for a Pro Tour, then it's going to be in your immediate geographic region, basically your continent or whatever. And that's probably going to help with travel cost, and especially if they keep this thing that Bob mentioned where they have a minimum payout of $500, which should help quite a bit. So I don't know how things are going to change with the GoFundMes, because I feel that people will eventually grow tired of it in a way, and also people will probably be more hesitant to like constantly use them, because I'm pretty sure that like if you use it like a couple times, you probably feel bad and you feel like maybe this needs to change, because apparently people are willing to pay that money. But which means like the money exists in the overall system that is Magic the Gathering almost. So I feel like maybe there's a way for Wizards to like turn this around. And even though like people are super unhappy about not like being able to fly to exotic, cool locations, so instead they're going to a town like 200 kilometers away. But maybe that's gonna be the next thing, the next step that's gonna happen that will somewhat alter the system. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely possible. There was the initial like announcement, and then they changed it from that. So maybe they'll go back to that. So who knows what's going to happen? I know we sort of alluded to this earlier. So yeah, Cyrus and I are at SCGCON in Roanoke, but I think it'd be a good thing if Wizards allowed people to defer invites. Star City also should consider it because Cyrus, he won the Vegas Open and he qualified for the SCGCon, but it was literally like 2 weeks of notice, and flights are really expensive when you try to book them that last minute. So
Yeah,
like
I think especially to Roanoke, Virginia, it was going to cost me like probably $1,500, I think, to fly
yeah,
from San Francisco. And I just told them, I'm like, well, because I think it's normally not an issue for them because they don't hold West Coast Opens, but this is the first one they've done in years. And then I won it, and they were like, oh yeah, sorry. Also, we're not going to really make an exception for you, which is understandable. It's a privilege to be able to play in invitationals like that. But I did
don't know,
feel
just like
somewhat
how
that I
does it
earned
really
it.
hurt them by like letting you defer their invite? Like I could like there would have to be a really lopsided scenario where like everybody like wanted to defer like because they didn't want to go to one, but like if they're literally all in Roanoke, they're like literally all the same. So it's like
Yeah, I mean, kind of jokes on me because they're getting my money anyways because I flew out here and I sure didn't. So I just felt like it was kind of frustrating because that was my first Star City Games, and it's kind of a cool thing to qualify for an invitational. It's not the same as a Pro Tour, but it's still something you need to qualify for, and I was kind of excited, and I just couldn't go. So I don't know, I was kind of bummed out about that a little bit just because I just couldn't afford a trip to Virginia, like, $1,500 trip to middle of nowhere from California's perspective. Um, I don't know. So I do wish they would have let me defer that, and I contacted a few people, and so did my teammates who are from, the western part of Canada, and I have a friend Nathan who top four that tournament who lives in the same city as me, and he's 16 and he couldn't go, and it's just yeah, I don't know. I get that it's a logistics issue and they have to have a policy and draw the line somewhere, but I think the problem with organized play for Wizards of the Coast is not so much a WotC thing as it is a Hasbro thing, where obviously Arena was in its beta, right? And the problem was that it kind of blew up, and I think it seemed like Hasbro was like, well, we want to take advantage of this as much as we can, so do like this MPL thing, which I think they probably had been planning the MPL and a system to replace gold and silver and all that for next year for 2020 is what it seemed like to me. And the problem is now that they just had to rush into it, and that's why they don't seem to have a fully set plan. Because I don't think their plan was fully set yet, and they had a lot of really good ideas, and they're trying to build off of those the best they can, but it really just seems like a group of people who don't have a plan, and it seems like they kind of maybe got rushed by corporate to, take advantage of this booming Arena craze.
Yeah, but it was kind of crazy how much Arena blew up, right? And I'm still not fully understanding it. And I see that there were a lot of probably like short notice changes and things they introduced that didn't really work out too well and that are causing some of those problems. Something that I've been thinking about for quite a long while is actually like, is this entire thing that we are having in Magic that is organized play, and especially with regards to pro level play, really viable or compatible with like the whole esports aspect that Wizards pushes a lot? Because if you compare the way like top level play in Magic is set up compared to like other esports, we have a lot more players actually competing in our premier events, if you exclude something like, I guess, the World Championships. Whereas in other tournaments or esports, it's not really like that you can actually compete at the very top level if you're like 30 and you have a like full-time job and you're not like part of our sponsor team, just because you don't have the time. And time and money, it's basically the same concept in that regard. If you don't have the time to practice as much and don't have the money to like travel around the world to play in those tournaments, then that's not something you can do. You can still like play with your friends and have fun and even play like local tournaments. But I think all these issues that we are having, part of that is that it's, I don't know, I don't really have a concept how to change that, but I guess you guys also do. But I'm following a lot of esports, and I'm noticing that with regards to Magic, it's really quite different. That we are having so many people with a full-time job trying to like be up there and get somewhere. Whereas in other esports, if you're 20 or you're like in university or like right out of university and you haven't made it to be like on a team that actually pays you stuff, then you're probably not gonna make it at all. There's exceptions, but there are
well,
very few.
I think the reason why so many more people can play Magic than like be a league pro is because Magic is a game with much more variance than League of Legends.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So like that's kind of it's a kind of two-sided sword. I made these like probably like ill-advised Twitter polls because they were just essentially pointless. Where basically we should maybe talk about this a little bit. The London Mulligan was officially implemented, and my argument is that the London Mulligan severely reduces variance because it means that your deck is probably going to do what you set out for it to do. And I said that was probably overall a good thing, but obviously some variance in Magic is good. Like, we want Magic to be skill intensive, but we don't want it to be 100% skill. We want a good amount of variance because otherwise, like, there's no point in playing a game, or like much fewer people would play this game if there were no variance, because only the best player would always win, and like at a certain point there's like a skill cap for a lot of players out there. So
there's a really good article by, I think, Aaron Forsyth that really changed the way I think about variance in Magic. Because when I came up as a player, like when I got better, I had this attitude of like, yeah, let's reduce variance so the good player, like brackets me, can always win. And then I read that article. I'm actually going to try to link it in the show notes. I'm going to try to find it. And that article changed everything, the way I thought about variance. And that's why, like Bob mentioned, that there's a reason we play Magic and we don't play chess, pretty much, and that is variance, and that allows us to like compete at a really high level without devoting our entire lives, like morning to evening, to it, like it's supposed to be in other esports. And that's a good point. That's also why we have more people competing for the top, because they actually can.
Well, so I really like the London Mulligan, and I think that Magic, the variance of Magic, like you both mentioned, is so important. But the problem with, there's just different types of variants. Like, like there's top decks, and those are exciting, and they're fun to watch on camera. Like, oh man, are they going to top deck like the Bonfire of the Damned, or the Lightning Helix top deck, or the Dragonstorm Ignite Memories clip? Like, those are all variant situations that are so exciting and make for great coverage and are fun, and it's kind of fun to be sitting across from that. Like, you're sitting there. I mean, we all play Legacy. We've all sit there like, oh, is he going to top deck the Natural Order? Is he going to top deck the Infernal Tutor? Is he going to Ponder Shuffle into Bolt? Like, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, that's exciting. That's what makes Magic great. And also, it's fun because worse players can be better players because of, string of lucky top decks. And one of the great parts about trading card games is you get a new card every single turn. And then there's variants like Luis Scott Vargas mulliganing to 4 in the final game 5 or whatever, the finals of the Pro Tour, which I think is one of the main reasons they did this. And that just sucks. The land system in Magic is one thing that makes it so interesting, because other games like Hearthstone have tried to implement a new system that kind of replaces the land system. I don't know exactly the name of that system in that game. I've played a lot of Hearthstone, but the name is escaping me. But it just doesn't work as well. Like, the land system is really interesting because of, you can't just always play all your cards, which makes it, fun. But, when you get color, like, I think so many people like get color screwed or get land screwed or, whatever, and they just don't ever want to play Magic ever again. And so I think this will help you play games that you can put yourself in the position to get lucky. And that, to me, is the part of variance that's interesting. What makes Magic so fun, kind of like poker, is where you're putting yourselves into positions to hit the right side of variance, and that's where a lot of the skill comes from. But there's not a lot of really skill if you just mulligan to 5 and never play a card and your opponent just wins. Like, that's not fun for either. I mean, it's fun. I kind of like doing it in big important matches because I like winning those. But it's not really fun to play against. It's not really fun to play with. It's not fun to watch on coverage. And if you want Magic to have a future as an esport, you can't have your probably the most popular player in your entire game, Luis Scott Vargas, mulliganing to 4 and losing the finals of Pro Tour. That does not look good for coverage.
Imagine that actually happened in, like, I don't know, League of Legends or something, where like somebody gets just like ruffle stomped and they didn't even put up a fight at all, and they'd be like, yeah, this is the finals of our $1 million tournament, like, cheer everyone.
I agree with all your points, Cyrus. You also personally play like one of the most fun variance cards ever, Ad Nauseam. It usually wins the game, but there's definitely still some variance involved.
Yeah, I mean, that card lost me, almost like, you could argue I also missed lethal that game, but I mean, that card lost me a painting on my wall. Like, I cast Ad Nauseam in the finals of the Eternal Weekend, and it did not get there. It's one of my, but it's exciting. Like, Ad Nauseam is an exciting card to watch. You're both sitting there, like, I think it's horrible logistic-wise. That's a whole different argument in terms of it takes forever and Like I remember I cast Ad Nauseam against Dave Long on the top 4 of the Open, and it literally took like 15 minutes to resolve the card because he wanted to write down every card in my hand.
Oh my god.
And then I killed him that turn, so I was just like, okay, dude, whatever. Because I was gonna cast a Brainstorm, so I wanted to pick it up. But yeah, I mean, Magic is fun because the variance, like, and things like that make it more fun. Where you don't get to see things like that with chess. You know, it's not like it's very lengthy, strenuous, interesting games from a strategic standpoint. But like those examples I listed earlier are good examples of great variance. Mulligan to 4 in the finals of a Pro Tour is an example of a horrible variance.
So I think one interesting thing that Ari brought up was that he was worried that the diversity of gameplay would be reduced if most games you get to do the thing that you set out to do. So that's, I think it's sort of a valid argument. I would have to see it a little bit more in practice to fully buy into it. Because, yes, the Chalice Leyline deck is going to open on Chalice Leyline more. But to me, like, that's kind of just how those decks are built. So it's kind of just like, yeah, they get to do their thing more. It means they're just like slightly better than before. So yeah, I don't know. I think the London Mulligan is basically it's great in a format where the answers outpace the threats, and I think Legacy is that kind of format. But in Modern and Vintage, there might be a couple growing pains where they might need to ban some cards as the format adjusts to like people trying to build decks like Neoform to abuse this rule. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for it.
It's kind of funny how Legacy is the eternal format that like people are the least concerned about, and I guess you could argue that Modern is not an eternal format, but that's a different discussion. But what actually makes Legacy different with, compared to Modern and Vintage, that our format has to worry less about the implications of the Mulligan, because I think 99% of people that have provided feedback on that, they are like super ecstatic and happy about that. And after playing with it like in April or Magic Online, a couple hundred matches, I'm also really looking forward to that. But what's so different in Vintage and Modern that
the threat, like Bob said,
apart?
Like Bob said, the threats are more powerful than the answers in Vintage and Modern. So you can look at like the Legacy ban list. I think one of the only cards that's really banned for being too powerful of an answer because it just leads to non-games, kind of as like Mental Misstep, for example, which you can argue, pushes through your own things and stuff. But yeah, I mean, like if you look at the premier decks on Legacy, like it's almost never the threat decks. Like Storm. When's the last time Storm was really like the best deck? Like things like that, like Sneak and Show Storm. Those decks just end up not being as good because the more consistent answer decks are just going to be better. But the problem with Modern is usually linear strategies are powerful, and there's a similar problem with Vintage, at least in my mind.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with all of your points, Cyrus. I would say that basically Delver and Miracles have been two of the best decks more or less since their inception. But I would say Legacy's gotten more interesting lately in that yeah, the answer decks are going to be really good, but for any given weekend, a threat deck is probably better than an answer deck because there's so many good threat decks in Legacy now too. So like Moon Stompy and like Blackwood Reanimator and Dark Depths and Storm, they're never going to be tier 1 forever. They're more exploitable strategies than Delver or Miracles, but for any given weekend, they can be significantly better than Delver or Miracles, for instance. And I'm like very happy about that, in that like that's a thing in Legacy where like your deck choice matters a lot. And sometimes the best deck is not a blue deck, which I'm also very happy about.
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot with Ant, actually. Like I've heard a lot of people say that Ant Ad Nauseam Tendril Storm is not a very good deck because even the best players in the world with the deck, like, I mean, Bryant Cook doesn't play Ant, he plays Test, but even his win rate is around 60%. My win rate's around 60%. All of the best Storm players only win around 60% of their matches, where if you compare that to other people, like you said that you basically wouldn't play a deck if you weren't winning close to 70% of your matches, or like Max Gilmore is similar. But the thing is it's not like it's 60%. It's not like I 3-2 every league. It's not like I go exactly 60% all my tournaments. I have found from tracking my data that I usually go on periods of 80% or 40%. So, for example, I had a run where I did pretty well at 2 large tournaments, and that felt like the deck was positioned in a way that it could be an 80% deck. But then, like, when Narset and Karn were really popular in Magic Online, I was only winning 40% of my matches for, like, over 50 matches, and it was terrible. I was so frustrated. I proclaimed the deck might not be viable anymore on Twitter. I was so frustrated, which I can be a little dramatic sometimes. It's part of my brand, I suppose. But and so I think that's a fine part to have of Magic. It's not fun if the cantrip deck, because it's the most consistent deck, is always the best deck. It's good to have the non-blue decks and the Chalice decks and the Gristlebrand decks and stuff. It's good to have them sometimes be the best deck because you can't just get a completely inbred meta where people are main decking Power Blast and stuff. So I'm personally a big fan of London Mulligan, and I think if they need to ban things that lead to non-games, I'm okay with that, because the London Mulligan is going to lead to more games that are getting played in general.
Yeah, I think that's eventually how it's gonna work out, really, because the Mulligan, I think we all played with it a lot. Our experience has been that it's really, really good for the game. It's just like it allows you to actually play the game. And if there's something that's, and I don't think there is, but I could be wrong, that will eventually be too powerful with the Mulligan in certain formats, then those will need to be addressed, but not the actual structure of the Mulligan itself, because the
fundamentally
way
going down a card is not broken. Just you're still down a card.
Yeah. I mean, mulliganing is an enormous cost, and so it's like, I mean, I basically already never mulligan, so it's like, I know Bob and I are both known for, and Julian too. I guess all three of us in terms of the legacy community, I think we're all known for basically never mulliganing, especially the decks we play.
It totally matters on the deck you play. I think like Delver, Miracles, Elves, Storm, they're decks that really hate mulliganing. Whereas, other decks like Chalice decks, like one of their cards is worth like 2 or 3 cards, so it's just like it just makes sense for them to mulligan.
Or like the deck I'm playing in Vintage this weekend in Mishra's Workshop, that card is worth 3 cards, so you mulligan a 5 a lot with that deck because you have 4 3-for-1s in your deck on a land.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually trying to get this episode out by Friday, maybe early Saturday. Are you guys comfortable with that, or should I postpone it?
Oh no, I don't care at all.
I don't care. I just won't leak too much of my. Let's see, what's tomorrow? Is tomorrow Friday?
I would also be really impressed if someone listened to this podcast on Friday while they're at SCGCON or something. I guess they could listen on the drive down if they're not playing the NV.
They can actually get paired against Cyrus, and they listen to all of this at 10 times the speed as they walk to the table.
Yeah, I'm not too worried. I usually am. I think that's something I'm really against.
You've been posting about this deck on Twitter, Cyrus. If
I don't have my exact list out, but
yeah.
I'm really against people kind of gatekeeping information. I just remember, I don't know. I think it's pretty harmful and just toxic to. I've had people get pretty frustrated with me of wanting to play decks that they gave me the list for, and it's well, then don't share your list. I'm known for pinned on my Twitter is my sideboard guide for Storm and the exact 75. If you Googled my name before my match, you would see exactly what deck I'm playing and how I'm sideboarding against you. So.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about kind of the SCGCON formats and then wrap up from here. I think we've had a really, really interesting discussion, but I know I don't want to have a 2-hour podcast. So yeah, let's just talk briefly about kind of what we're playing. So you mentioned that you're going to be playing basically Karn shops in Vintage. What other decks are you bringing this weekend?
Yeah, well, we could go format by format too if you wanted to go working your way up, if we start, because you're playing Standard, right?
Yep.
So
let's go down from most powerful to least powerful. I'm not exactly sure where to put Old School.
Okay, yeah. We'll just start with Old School, I guess, because it's
sure.
So I'm not playing Old School. There was an Old School tournament today at a bar. But part of the Team Trios event is that there is an Old School portion of the Legacy Vintage Old School team. I am teaming with a very good Old School player, and there's a few premier decks in Old School. There's the ATOG deck. There's the deck, which is kind of a blue-white based control deck. There's mono-black aggro, mono-white, white/red aggro. But mostly Old School is just more about it being kind of a fun, casual format where you hang out and drink beers and play with old, sweet cards. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see it. This is a sanctioned, no proxies allowed. Definitely no international or collector's edition, which is usually how Old School is played, is with an international collector's edition allowed. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what decks people bring. And I know what deck my teammate is bringing. I just don't want to speak for him because it's his thing, so I won't leak anything. But he's a very good Old School player. I hung out with him a little bit today, and I'm excited to play with him.
I'm very excited too. What's his name?
His name is Will Mangran, I think.
McGran. Okay, awesome, cool. Yeah, I'm playing with Dave Long. He's known as Legacy Land/Depths Master. He's playing Old School. He's playing Reanimator, which is kind of his own brew. And I love rogue decks. Nothing gets me more excited than a rogue deck. And he thinks he has a build of Reanimator nobody's ready for, or is at least better than the lists that are out there. And I think my dog totally agrees. So I'm super excited to see that. Julian, do you play Old School? What decks do you play?
I actually do play Old School every once in a while because a guy at our bar where we play each week, he's got pretty much all the Old School decks, so he sometimes recruits me to play with him, and I do enjoy it. basically, like Cyrus mentioned, it's probably not something I would really get deep into competitively, but I do enjoy the atmosphere of it. I like the deck a lot. I feel like it's probably the strongest deck, even though there's this ATOG artifact deck that I was actually looking down upon for quite a while because it played like copper tables or whatever. And it actually turned out to be really good. But more like a tier 2 deck that I like quite a lot is Armageddon. And that's what I've been playing old school every once in a while when we do play. So I'm really looking forward to what Dave's actually bringing to the table, because I know that my friend at the bar, he's gonna be all about that. He wants to know all the new decks.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see. And I feel pretty good about my team because we have probably the best old school player in the world, and then we have the vintage world champion, and then the legacy world champion runner up, even though we switched. But I feel pretty good, and I'm excited for this event. But yeah, Old School's a sweet format. In Vintage, I'm going to be playing Karn Shops, which is interesting because those that know me, I almost only ever play Storm-based spell combo decks in any format that I can. And I had been working on this Paradoxical Outcome Storm deck for several months. I felt it was really good. And then War of the Spark came out. And then Karn won 5 consecutive Vintage challenges on Moto.
Is it 5 now? That's insane.
Yeah.
It's going to get restricted, like it has to.
And Brian Koval, the Vintage World Champion, and I have been working on a list, and I really think we kind of broke it. I've been 4-1ing or 5-0ing every single league I've played on Moto, losing basically only to the Mirror. Yeah, so basically what the deck is it is a shops-based deck, so it plays the card Mishra's Workshop, which is a land that taps for 3 mana. You can only cast artifacts. And then you use Karn the Great Creator, which is a new Planeswalker. But what that lets you do is it lets you assemble Time Vault combo. And so what you are is you're a prison deck that wins on turn 2 or 3. So I've had games where I go turn 1 Trinisphere, and I win the game before my opponent can actually possibly cast a spell. Like I win before they play their 3rd land. So it's pretty absurd, and you break the symmetry of the spheres and stuff with the workshops and the ancient tombs, and then you're playing Grim Monolith plus Voltaic Key, which lets you generate a lot of mana, and then you're playing a bunch of Voltaic Keys. So as soon as you play the Karn, you can often just get Time Vault, play it, use the Voltaic Key to untap it. And then I have some tech that I've added to it. I changed the mana base, I changed some of the threat base, I changed the wish board, because that's one interesting part about playing Karn is you play a wish board. So I'm actually planning on playing 75 colorless cards. There are no spells that have colored mana and their mana cost in my deck. But kind of the other premier decks in Vintage are Ravager Shops, which is kind of uses like the affinity creature suite of Arcbound Ravager, like Hangerback Walker, Steel Overseer, and then it plays Sphere Resistance, Mishra's Workshop, which is kind of like you could think of it as if you play Modern, like being more like a human/affinity hybrid. It's not really a prison deck, or like in Legacy, it plays a lot like Canadian Threshold, Rug Delver, Tyranny Delver, whatever you want to call it. And then it's kind of just trying to use the sphere, because spheres don't really lock you out of the game, and Chalice and Trinisphere are restricted, so it's really just Sphere Resistance is the only unrestricted lock piece. So you're trying to slow your opponent down. So that's one of the premier decks. There's Dredge, which is, it's a Bizarre Baghdad deck. It's a deck that gets to play 4 Force of Will, 4 Mind Break Trap, 4 Mental Misstep main, and kill you on turn 3. So everyone kind of just hates Dredge, but it's part of the metagame. And then there's Xerox, which is kind of like, you can think of it as being like Blue-Red Pyromancer. It just plays all the good blue cards and is trying to just win the game by drawing a bunch of cards, basically, and having a young Pyromancer or whatever. And then there's Paradoxical Outcome Storm, which is a premier deck, which is a Storm-based combo deck using the card Paradoxical Outcome. So those are kind of the decks I'm expecting to see. And then usually often people play Oath. Oh, and then Eldrazi is a deck in Vintage now, because the big problem with Eldrazi always was that Mishra's Workshop is legal in this format, and you're trying to play Eldrazi Temple, which is, in my opinion, pretty silly. But the Eldrazi cards are more resilient to hate, like they don't get a Shattering Spree, or Energy Flux. But now it's kind of almost an upside, because Eldrazi Temple casts Karn better than Mishra's Workshop does. So that's we're seeing a lot of that deck. So those are kind of the Vintage decks that I expect to see. I think Karn Shops is by far the best deck in the format, and I expect it to pretty overwhelmingly dominate for as many people are playing, because it is a newer-ish deck. It's only been out for about a month, so I don't know how many people will be playing it.
Yeah, Karn Shop seems ridiculously good. Everybody was all over that.
Yeah, just like Cyrus is saying, having the nut draw win early as well as the nut draw spheres, it's like, okay, come on, how many nut draws do you need?
Yeah, you can win I won on turn 1. It's insane. Your deck that plays Trinisphere should be.
So, how do you feel about a deck that showed up like a year or two ago and made itself known, Blue Belcher? But because I always got the impression that like one of the ideas of Blue Belcher was, if you're on the draw, you can always hit the ley line of anticipation and win on your opponent's upkeep pretty much before they play their first sphere. Is that something that people play, or is it just like underpowered?
Yeah, so that used to be a deck for a long time, actually, for many years. Kind of the problem is that Paradoxical Outcome got printed, and that's just a better payoff than Goblin Charbelcher. So that is kind of the deck that targets the Workshop aggro decks. Is those decks' worst matchup is Paradoxical Outcome, which is you're playing 4 Force of Wills, you're playing multiple main deck Hurkyl's Recalls. Your deck is almost all mana Force of Wills / Hurkyl's Recalls and combo kill. So you're like a turn 1 deck that plays Force of Will and Hurkyl's Recall. So but what's interesting, and those decks are exceptionally weak to Null Rod, and that's what's interesting about Karn, the Great Creator in Vintage, is now you get to play 4 one-sided Null Rod, because the Workshop aggro decks oftentimes played Null Rod in their deck, which is a bit of an issue because then your deck is all 2 mana 1/1s, and it's not very effective anymore. But Karn is one-sided, and also you can win the game much faster. You can win the game on turn 2 or 3 more often because of Karn combo, and also you just make massive creatures. Like you play Karn Slide of Urza and make a 10/10 construct and kill them with it. I don't think Blue Belcher is really a real deck until Paradoxical Outcome gets restricted, just because I think that's a better payoff in that.
And what about budget? Is budget still something that people try to do? Are there still budget prices? Because I'm wondering, first of all, is Modern Horizons actually going to be legal for this weekend? No, it's not? Oh.
No,
it just came out on Moto today, I believe, but it's not legal this weekend. So the best budget deck is Moonstompy, which is almost exactly like Legacy Moonstompy, but there are several restricted lock pieces. So like there's Chalice Transfer restricted, things like that. So they replace it with Null Rod. So it kind of uses Null Rod plus Blood Moon to lock your opponent out of their mana, and then plays the powerful Moonstompy threats that we all know, like Goblin Rabblemaster, I guess it plays. That's kind of the best budget deck. And then there's Eldrazi based decks, and there's like Death and Taxes type of decks, like Eldrazi and Taxes is sort of a budget deck. There's definitely budget decks. I mean, or Survival is another deck that we play that's definitely not budget, but that deck I think is just not really a real deck because you're trying to cast Basking Root Wall and Vintage. But those are So I mean, it top 8 a champ, so it's not a terrible deck. But I just think you look at your hand of Basking Root Wall and you're thinking, well, what am I signing up for? Those are the decks I kind of expect. I think Vintage is in a really, really terrible place right now. It's my favorite format and the one I play the most, probably. And man, it's just. I think that the London Mulligan's really bad for this format because of the power level of certain cards. Like, I had like above an 80% win rate with the London Mulligan. Like, I'm not even a good shops player, and I went like 14-1 with shops, and I 6-0'd a challenge with outcome, and it just was pretty silly. So I think a lot of cards are going to get restricted, which I'm happy with because I think that's just going to push Vintage.
You mean Highlander?
To be anyways.
But do you just kind of see this as a cycle that's going to keep continuing, given that they're never going to restrict shops in Bazaar probably? So like it's just going to be like, well, they're going to print a busted artifact or a dredge card, and like we're going to do a bunch of restrictions.
It's kind of interesting because the blue decks are still 70% of the meta. So people complain a lot about workshops and dredge, but part of Vintage is kind of interesting is the financial constraint. So workshops just isn't very popular in paper because you need to own power plus workshops. And dredge, I don't know. You can argue against dredge and shops. I personally am happy with them being the meta. I like that. I think I don't know how good non-blue decks would be. There's the argument that like humans and Eldrazi could be more of real decks if you restricted workshop, because that's kind of what keeps those decks out of their horrible workshops matchup. But we'll see. I think that restrictions are fine for Vintage, and I think it's cool to play with workshop because it creates a whole archetype, and the same with Bazaar. Like, it's cool that you get to play Magic in this way. That's what's great about Vintage to me, is it's all the cards ever. So you get to play this very unique deck in dredge, and you get to play this artifact base deck in workshop, and the meta is still 70% blue. If you like playing blue mirrors, you're still going to play almost only blue mirrors, but generally the match win percentage of shops tends to be a little bit higher than the other decks.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too. All right, well, let's move on to the next format, Legacy. What are you going to be playing there? And actually, we had a listener question. If you weren't playing Ant, what would you play?
I play Bomberman if I wasn't playing Ant. Actually, if I could have gotten the cards, I would have played that deck. I think it's really powerful in the sense.
Oh, I like it so much.
Deck a lot.
Honestly, I've made, I can't say a lot of money, but a couple $100 over just a couple weeks playing after work because the deck is so insane. I think this, when we talk about win rates, Bomberman might be at certain points have been right around 80% win rates. For me, it's gone down quite a bit ever since Peter Vanderham produced this standard Arcana Stalwart list that plays one Abrade in the main and one more in the sideboard, and even more stuff that you do care about. And Yeah.
Like
And
no
sometimes
rot.
they don't even care about Chalice. Like, if they're on the play, they just, like, go turn 2 Arcanist, turn 3 Pyromancer, and then, like, they cast everything into the Chalice and build this huge army because they can cast every cantrip twice. And then you just lose because, like, just one Wasteland can completely make you struggle then. But it's still quite good.
Yeah, I think that deck's really good.
Yeah, that deck is busted. Might actually, like, it's probably, like, on the shortlist for the so-called best deck in the format right now.
Yeah, I think Legacy didn't have a best deck for a while, which was pretty exciting. But here's my I don't know if it's a hot take because I just like pretty strongly believe in it. Once Modern Horizons is released, I think Blue Red Delver and Grixis Delver are going to be the best decks. They already kind of have been dominating the last couple of challenges, and I just don't see that changing. Because they basically just got a really big power boost in Dreadhorde Arcanist. It's like people have been calling it like 2-mana Jace. It does like Thoughtseize, Brainstorm, or Lightning Bolt. So I'm really excited about Modern Horizons because Force of Negation and Plague Engineer for Grixis Delver. Plague Engineer is basically a one-sided answer to True Name Nemesis. And then Force of Negation, I'm probably going to start with 2 copies in my sideboard. And it just means that like you're not going to get cheesed out by decks like Blackbird Reanimator or Moonstompy as often. And you're going to get more chances to play Magic. And then along with the London Mulligan is just like, I feel really strongly that these decks are really good because like just having an active Arcanist beats every deck in Legacy.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to
when
beat.
you're when you're a Delver deck that's just like all your spells are close to free anyways, and all your spells are super efficient on curve, and then you also double the cards. It's kind of like Treasure Cruise all over again. It's obviously not as good because it's a creature. You can interact with it. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more blue blasts going forward, but I think it is like clearly one of the best things to be doing in the format.
Yeah, just to
and
get back
that's
to
what
the
will be fun
challenge,
this
it actually
weekend.
put 4
Yeah.
copies in the top 8.
Sam
Yeah, that's
Sam
ridiculous.
Pardee won it. So
I almost got him on this list.
yeah,
Anyway.
so I don't know. I'm gonna Yeah, I think you got 9th, right? That was close. But I'm going to be playing Ad Nauseam Tendrils to the surprise of no one. I've been doing pretty well in the deck. I don't really play a lot of Legacy anymore because I kind of don't find some of the interactions to be especially fun. But I do like playing against that new Delver deck. I think it's a pretty cool deck because I just find the matchup of Storm versus Delver with like Daze and stuff to be an interesting dynamic and Spell Pierce. So I'm planning on playing Storm, and kind of some tech that Jonathan Alexander and Kai Sawatari have been preaching for a long time is Daze in Ad Nauseam Tendrils. And for those who don't know, Michael Clifford is an MCQ, Legacy MCQ winner, Cliffy81, who streams. He kind of adopted the Daze tech too and has been playing it. And then we Skyped a couple of leagues, and I think I went 14-1 with the list.
You get some good screenshots with Days.
Yeah, I Daze a lot of Chalices and Gaddock Teagues and some Show and Tells. So I feel pretty strong about that deck. I don't know how good it is, but I'm having a lot of fun dazing people because I played Delver for several years before Storm. So I don't know. I think I'm probably going to play Dazing Ant this weekend because I'm kind of more focused on Vintage anyways, and I just haven't really been enjoying Legacy a ton, and I think I've been enjoying playing this crazy deck. Like, your sideboard plan is you sideboard out 4 Infernal Tutors, 4 Lions.
Wait, what?
To give you a clue of what kind of deck this is. Yeah, that's the sideboard plan that Kaya gave us. So we're sideboarding out 4 Lions at him and 4 Infernal Tutors in some matchups, multiple matchups. So that's the kind of deck it is, and it's just a really fun way to play Magic, and kind of no one sees it coming, and you're kind of off the wall. Like, and we had like people like I dazed a Gaddock Teague, and the next game my opponent didn't cast the Gaddock Teague in turn 2, and then I killed them. So it's pretty fun. Like, people just don't really know how to play against it because it's like you just straight up can't respect Daze out of Storm because they'll just kill you. So the thing about Delver is you daze them, and it's like whatever, you can just afford to play around it because Delver is like not that fast of a clock. But Storm wins on turn 2 or 3 pretty often, so Daze is pretty interesting in that deck, and there's a really solid sideboard plan of, like I said, like I played against Honorog and Rugbed recently where like they had like Force of Willed me. Their hand was like 2 counter spells. They had an active Jace, a counterbalance, and they'd surgicaled my Abrupt Decays, and I won that game with casting I think 0 discard spells because of our sideboard plan. So
That sounds like some Jonathan Alexander type sideboard plan, because that's pretty wild.
Yeah, maybe 2. I cast 2 discard spells, but at the end of the game, I ended up just ignoring their counter spells. So, yeah, it's a pretty fun list. So I think I'm going to play that. I brought all the cards with me. We're still kind of tuning the list, and I know Cliffy wrote an article about it, so it's going to be interesting. So, but I like the Bomberman deck. I think it's very similar to Karn Drops in that you kind of what's powerful about it is it's a pretty fast deck that has a very diversified threat suite, and it's kind of unfair. I mean, when your Chalice deck can also win on.
I've won on the first
2,
turn,
or
yeah.
3. So I think. So I think I like that deck. I think that's what I would probably be playing if I had access to
You
all
also
the cards.
play like 8 Karns in both decks, or like 7 or 8,
Yeah.
So they're actually. I was talking to Max. I was like, hey, you can play like Bomberman in Vintage now, basically, like the Karn Shops deck is very similar.
Yeah, I gave him my
or
list.
has similarities.
And we were
Yeah.
he played it through a league. So, yeah. So I feel fine about Legacy right now. I think I was pretty down on Legacy when Karn and Narset were kind of everywhere. But the fun police of Delver kind of came up and brought everything back to normal, and I really appreciate Delver for that because anytime the format starts getting just really stupid, people just start dazing things, and we're all back to normal. And then the decks that are good against Delver, like Elves and Storm, which I find, and Maverick, which lands, which I find to be pretty interesting decks, like they kind of do pretty unique, cool things, and they also happen to be good against Delver. They kind of pop back up, and there's this cycle because some of those decks are kind of linear, and then you start to get more Chalice decks. So I'm willing to accept that Legacy is just in a cycle now, because when I came into Legacy, Miracle was the top deck, then Grixis Delver. So I just never really got to play in a meta that was actually cyclical. It was always just a best deck, and I'm learning to accept that sometimes my deck is just going to be really, really, really bad, and I can just go play other formats when that's happening or play a different deck.
Sweet. Yeah, let's wrap up. I don't know if we ever talk about Standard or Modern in this podcast, but I'll just briefly touch on my decks. I'm playing in the NV. I'm playing Blue-Red Phoenix in Standard. I'm playing Hollow One in Modern. I'm basically playing what I'm comfortable in Modern. I don't feel great about it, but I win a lot with it, and I just can't explain why I'm winning, which is probably not a good reason.
Because you're a noob lucker with Burning Inquiry.
Yeah, basically. So I'm just going to play that, and then Standard, I couldn't find a good deck until I started playing Blue-Red Phoenix, and then I won a decent amount this week in leagues.
Your dog is calling you out,
but
you're actually dying.
I'm just going to run with that. Well, okay, I did win a lot, but it was with people Skyping with me, so who knows if I'll be able to replicate that.
Okay, I'll just stand over your shoulder. Yeah. I played 2 Standard MCQs recently. I lost my win in both. It was really fun. I was really happy about that. But can't complain too much about overall, like 12-4 or whatever in MCQs, but I would have liked to win one more match in one of those. But yeah, so should be cool. Standard's actually in a pretty cool spot right now. Modern.
I've heard it be described as like the most modern like it's ever been, because there's like probably 8 or 9 different decks, and like all of them attack from a different angle. I think the answers are different in Standard. The threats are very powerful though. But I think Standard's in a good spot. I'm very excited to play it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been my Standard Limited have been what I've been having the most fun with recently, and Modern's cool too. I mean, people like to hate on Modern, but it is what it is, and some people really enjoy that. I like it, so I think Hollow One's a pretty bad deck, but you do tend to win with a lot. You just top 8 like the last Open you played with it, so I feel confident that you'll do well.
All right, yeah, I guess let's wrap up now. Is there I don't know, any last things people want to say? Maybe like Cyrus, you can kind of leave your social media plugs.
Yeah, so I tweet a lot of things, sometimes overly emotional, dramatic things, sometimes deck lists, sometimes memes at twitter.com/CyrusCGMTG, I think. And I'm planning on starting streaming again next week at twitch.tv/CyrusCG, so you can see me play some Sealed, even though I mostly play Legacy. But I will be practicing for a Sealed MCQ I'm qualified for next weekend.
Cool. And you can find me, as always, at GrizzlePuff on Twitter and twitch.tv/GrizzlePuff. I don't really stream, but I've been really busy lately, and I'm thinking about streaming more kind of once I'm done being busy. So we'll see.
And if you want to follow some of my stuff, you can hit me up on Twitter at itsjulian23. I also try to stream like twice or even 3 times a week at twitch.tv/itsjulian. You can also go to itsjulian.com, where this podcast is hosted and where I post a lot of my leaks and sometimes even articles and other stuff. And also, if you want to support the running of the show, you can head to patreon.com/everydayeternal, and you can subscribe at, or I guess it's called pledge, amounts between $1 or $10 per episode. And I want to give shoutouts to our 2 Grizzlebrand here subscribers, Kurosh and Scott Monroe, who've been there for pretty much the very beginning of the podcast, who've been helping us out a lot. So thanks a lot for that, guys and girls. And see you again next time on Everyday Eternal, when we will probably find out how our heroes were doing on the weekend in Standard, Old School.
I do want to add one more final thing. Sorry, Julian. Yeah, please donate to our Patreon so that Julian doesn't need to create a bunch of fake emails anymore to support how we make this podcast. So if you want to help Julian out, do him a solid. This is his GoFundMe. Please support our Patreon.
Also, you can also like send us reviews on, for example, iTunes, or I think you could still be our first Spotify review. We still haven't gotten a review on Spotify, but we've got a lot of actually amazing and some of them really funny reviews that were like spot on. I think somebody compared us to Jennifer Aniston. We're getting better with time. I mean,
Okay.
I think we're gonna leave it at that, and see you again next time. Thanks a lot for listening, and you guys, good luck on the weekend.
I mean, worst case scenario, we can say that Cyrus had mic issues and had to leave, but hopefully we don't come to that.
We can also just lie and say he was kidnapped or something. Somebody came along and he kidnapped him. He wanted him to teach him Storm for the entire night, and then he would come free again. And then in the finals of the tournament, they meet again, and Cyrus has actually taught him something wrong, and then he takes advantage of that. And
we should just leave this whole part of the podcast.
Maybe we are.
Behind the scenes of Everyday Eternal.